Councilor Vex Tartoon of the Cygnus Collective straightened his neck frills and adjusted his ceremonial sash for the 14th time in as many minutes. The grand chamber of the Galactic Senate was packed tighter than a Neptunian sardine can. Representatives from over 3,000 planetary systems had crammed themselves into the massive amphitheater, creating a cacophony of clicks, whistles, and translator-enhanced chatter that bounced off the vaulted ceiling. "Will you stop fidgeting?" hissed his aide, Liza. Her green scales flushed purple with annoyance. "You look like a nervous hatchling on their first day of flight school." "I can't help it," Vex whispered back. "This isn't just another trade agreement or border dispute. We are voting on the fate of an entire species." Liza rolled her compound eyes. "The humans? Please. They have barely mastered interplanetary travel. Their technology is so primitive they still use combustion engines. And have you seen those ridiculous water-filled eyeballs? How did they even evolve to the point of sentience?" The chamber's lights dimmed, and the massive holographic projection in the center flickered to life. Supreme Chancellor Zog Krill, a massive octopod from the Aquarius cluster, materialized before them. His tentacles waved gracefully as he called for order. Distinguished representatives of the Galactic Confederation, his voice boomed through the universal translators. "We gather today to vote on Proposition 42B, the quarantine and potential neutralization of Sol System Planet 3, designation Earth, and its dominant species, humans." Vex felt a flutter in his secondary heart. He'd studied the reports on humans extensively, more than most of his colleagues. While the official data painted them as primitive, barely space-faring mammals with a troubling propensity for violence, he'd noticed something else in the cultural broadcasts they'd intercepted. Something that made him uneasy. "The floor recognizes Admiral Grok of the Military Council," announced Chancellor Krill. A hulking draconian in full battle regalia stomped to the central podium. Admiral Grok's species were known for their warrior culture and tactical brilliance, which made his next words all the more alarming. "Esteemed colleagues," Grok growled, his voice like gravel in a blender. "The Military Council has completed its assessment of the humans. Our conclusion is unanimous and urgent. They must be contained immediately." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. "These creatures," continued Grok, with a theatrical wave of his clawed hand, "have waged over 15,000 wars against themselves in their brief history. They develop nuclear weapons, then use them on their own planet." He paused dramatically. "That's not strategy. That's insanity." A holographic display appeared, showing footage of human conflicts throughout history. Arrows and spears gave way to gunpowder, then tanks, then mushroom clouds. "But that's not the worst of it," Grok continued, his yellow eyes narrowing. "The truly concerning element is their adaptability and resilience. They simply refuse to die as a species. Their planet has undergone 5 mass extinction events, and somehow they are still there. They have survived ice ages, supervolcanoes, meteor impacts, pandemics, and their own best efforts to wipe themselves out." Liza leaned over to Vex. "He makes them sound like cockroaches." "The galaxy has seen aggressive species before," Grok was saying. "We have encountered predatory civilizations. But humans? They are something else entirely. They don't just kill for resources or territory. They kill for ideas. For invisible boundaries they have invented. For differences in belief systems that cannot be proven or disproven." Another display showed humans building monuments, creating art, dancing, and then immediately returned to scenes of warfare. "They are creative and destructive in equal measure," said Grok. "They will write a heartbreaking poem about suffering, then cause more of it. They will develop medicine to save lives, then bombs to end them more efficiently." The Admiral slammed his fist on the podium. "And now they have begun to venture beyond their planet in earnest. Their progress is accelerating. In the span of a single generation, they have gone from their first orbital flights to establishing colonies on neighboring worlds. At this rate, they will develop FTL travel within 50 years. He lowered his voice to a menacing rumble. Can you imagine what will happen when creatures this unpredictable, this dangerous, gain access to the wider galaxy? The chamber erupted in alarmed chatter. Vex found himself squirming uncomfortably in his seat. Yes, humans were frightening when framed this way, but something still felt off about this whole proceeding. Chancellor Krill's tentacles waved for silence. We will now hear from the Science Directorate. A willowy figure floated to the podium. Director Pella Thorne of the Science Directorate was a gaseous entity contained within a transparent environment suit. Her voice came through as melodic and soothing. The Science Directorate acknowledges the Military Council's concerns, she began. However, we must note that human development, while rapid, follows predictable patterns seen in other intelligent species. Their violence, while concerning, has shown a statistical decrease over their recent history. Holographic charts appeared, showing declining rates of human conflict. Moreover, continued Director Thorne, humans display remarkable cognitive abilities. Their capacity for abstract thought, creative problem-solving, and technology adaptation is in the 87th percentile galaxy-wide. This suggests they may eventually outgrow their more primitive tendencies. Admiral Grok snorted loudly. With respect, Director, that's like saying a hungry Nexus beast might eventually become vegetarian if we wait long enough. How many worlds should we risk while hoping humans mature? Vex couldn't contain himself any longer. He pressed the button requesting to speak. To his surprise, his indicator lit up almost immediately. The chair recognizes Councilor Vex Tartoon of the Cygnus Collective, announced Chancellor Krill. Vex stood, feeling thousands of alien eyes and other sensory organs turned toward him. His frills fluttered nervously. Esteemed colleagues, he began, grateful for the voice amplification that hid his tremor. I have spent the past cycle studying human transmissions, literature, and history. And I must say, I believe we are making a grave mistake. A low murmur ran through the crowd. Yes, humans are violent. Yes, they are unpredictable. But they are also something we rarely encounter in the galaxy, a paradox species. For every horrific act of destruction they commit, they create something of breathtaking beauty. For every war they wage, they forge new alliances. They can hate with stunning intensity, and in the next moment sacrifice themselves for complete strangers. Vex gestured to the displays still showing scenes of human conflict. Admiral Grok mentioned they have survived 5 extinction-level events. But he didn't mention how. It wasn't through superior technology or biological advantages. It was through cooperation, adaptation, and sheer stubborn refusal to accept defeat. He took a deep breath. I believe that quarantining or neutralizing humans wouldn't just be morally questionable, it would be a terrible strategic error. A species that thrives on overcoming obstacles, that bonds together when threatened. We wouldn't be containing a problem, we'd be creating our worst nightmare. Admiral Grok's scales flushed crimson with anger. And Councilor Tartoon apparently prefers poetry to practicality. While he waxes poetic about human potential, I'm trying to prevent a galactic catastrophe. Order. Order. Chancellor Krill's tentacles waved frantically. We will maintain decorum in these proceedings. An enormous figure rose from the Frontier Worlds section. General Draz Mogan of the Ursa Coalition, a bear-like being standing nearly 3 meters tall, growled for recognition. The Ursa Coalition agrees with Admiral Grok, rumbled General Mogan. We have lost 3 research vessels in the Sol system. 3. The humans shot them down thinking they were, what's their term? Weather balloons? A species that attacks what it doesn't understand is a species that cannot be reasoned with. More delegates began signaling to speak. The chamber descended into chaos as representatives shouted over each other. Chancellor Krill's amplified voice barely cut through the din. We will have order. This is the Galactic Senate, not a Martian tavern brawl. Gradually, the uproar subsided. Chancellor Krill's tentacles were now a stressed shade of orange. Since opinions are clearly divided, we will proceed directly to the vote, he announced. The motion before us, to declare Earth and its dominant species a Class 1 threat, authorizing immediate quarantine measures, and, if deemed necessary by the Security Council, the neutralization actions. Vex felt sick. Neutralization was bureaucratic language for planetary sterilization, the complete eradication of a sentient species. It had only been authorized twice in the Confederation's 12,000-year history. The voting commenced. Each representative's console lit up, awaiting their decision. Vex hesitated, his webbed finger hovering over the options. Liza nudged him. "Vote no, you idiot," she whispered. "You just gave that impassioned speech." "But what if I'm wrong?" Vex whispered back. "What if they really are as dangerous as Grok says?" Liza's scales shifted to a thoughtful blue. "Of course they are dangerous. But so is every species when cornered. If we vote to threaten them, we guarantee conflict. If we vote to engage with them, we at least have a chance for peace." Vex nodded and pressed no on his console. The massive tally board above the Chancellor's podium flickered as votes poured in. When the final count appeared, a shocked silence fell over the chamber. Yes, 1,872, no, 1,127 abstain, 14. The motion had passed. Earth was officially classified as a threat to galactic security. Chancellor Krill's voice was somber. "The Senate has spoken. As per Confederation protocol, the Security Council will dispatch a fleet to Sol system within the quarter cycle to establish a quarantine perimeter and assess the necessity of further action." As the session adjourned, Vex felt numb. He moved through the crowd in a daze, barely registering the heated debates erupting around him. Councilor Tartoon. Vex turned to see Director Pella Thorne gliding toward him, her gaseous form swirling anxiously within her containment suit. Director Thorne, he acknowledged with a formal bow. "I appreciate your support during the debate." "It wasn't enough," she said, her melodic voice tinged with distress. "But that's not why I'm here. There's something you should know, something not included in the official reports." Vex leaned closer. "What is it?" "The humans," she whispered. "They know we are watching them." Vex's frills stood straight up in shock. "That's impossible. Our observation posts are cloaked with the most advanced technology in the galaxy." "Nevertheless," said Director Thorne, "we have detected anomalies. Human communications occasionally contain references, jokes about alien observers, scientific discussions that seem directly responsive to our research queries. It's as if they are performing for us, or testing us," muttered Vex. "Precisely. And there's more. The 3 research vessels General Mogan mentioned, our analysis suggests they weren't shot down accidentally. The humans targeted them with surprising precision using technology they shouldn't possess." Vex felt his scales prickling with alarm. "Are you saying they are more advanced than we thought?" "I'm saying they are more aware than we thought," corrected Director Thorne. "And now we have just voted to threaten them directly. This concerns me greatly." Before Vex could respond, a commotion erupted across the chamber. Delegates were clustering around communication terminals, expressions of shock and confusion on their varied faces. "What's happening?" asked Vex. An aide rushed up to Director Thorne, whispered something, then hurried away. The gaseous swirls within her containment suit froze momentarily. "Director?" prompted Vex. "It appears," she said slowly, "that the humans have just detected our recent vote." "That's not possible," Vex said automatically. "The Senate's quantum encryption has been compromised," finished Director Thorne. "Somehow they intercepted our entire session. And they have responded." "Responded? How?" Director Thorne's voice was barely audible. "They have activated something called the Sentinel Protocol. All human military forces are on high alert. Their primitive nuclear weapons are armed and aimed at, well, at the sky." Vex felt his blood run cold. "They can't possibly hope to defend against a Confederation fleet." "But that's just it," said Director Thorne. "They are not preparing to defend. According to the transmission we just received, they are preparing to expand." She pulled up a holographic display showing a message in human text, translated into Galactic Standard. It's to the Galactic Confederation from United Earth Command. We have monitored your deliberations and acknowledge your vote. For centuries, we allowed your observation posts, believing first contact should come at your initiative. We respected your apparent desire for caution. Your vote today changes everything. Be advised, any hostile action against Earth or human interests will trigger immediate implementation of the Sentinel Protocol. We are already among you. We have always been among you. You just never thought to look. Vex stared at the message, his mind racing. This has to be a bluff. They can't possibly. The Senate chamber's emergency alarm suddenly blared to life. Red warning lights pulsed as the massive security doors began to close. Admiral Grok's voice thundered over the commotion, security breach. The Senate's defense systems have been compromised. Chaos erupted as delegates pushed toward the exits. Above the pandemonium, the massive central hologram flickered, Chancellor Krill's image dissolving and reforming into something else, a human face. The face smiled. "Hello, Galactic Confederation," said the human, its voice eerily calm amid the panic. "My name is Admiral Tessa Reed of United Earth Command. We thought it was time we introduced ourselves properly." Vex stood frozen in shock as the human continued. "For the record," said Admiral Reed, "we vote no on your proposition too." The hologram expanded, revealing not just one human but dozens, all wearing the same uniform, all standing on what appeared to be the bridge of a vessel. "You see," continued Admiral Reed, "while you have been watching us stumble around with our primitive technology on Earth, you missed what we were doing elsewhere. The observation posts you placed in our system? We have known about them for over a century. The research vessels you sent? We didn't shoot them down, we captured them, studied them, replicated their technology." The view pulled back further, revealing that the human vessel was massive, a warship unlike anything in the Confederation fleet. "This transmission is coming to you live from what you'd call the Proxima Centauri system. It's our first colony. One of many." Vex felt Liza grip his arm tightly. Around them, the Senate chamber had fallen into stunned silence. "We have been listening to your debates about us for decades," said Admiral Reed. "Funny thing about being underestimated, it gives you time to prepare. While you were voting on whether to neutralize us, we were building fleets. While you were debating our potential, we were mapping your territories." The human's expression hardened. "The Sentinel Protocol is now active. Any aggression against Earth will be met with immediate response, not defense response. We know where all your homeworlds are." Admiral Reed's face softened slightly. "But we'd prefer a different approach. We are not the monsters some of you think we are. We are survivors, yes, fighters when we need to be. But we are also explorers, creators, dreamers." She nodded to someone off-screen. "We are dispatching diplomatic vessels to the coordinates attached to this message. Our representatives will arrive within one standard week. We suggest you prepare to negotiate terms for humanity's entry into your Galactic Confederation, as equals, not as subjects to be quarantined or neutralized." The hologram began to fade. Admiral Reed's voice echoed through the chamber one final time. "Oh, and Chancellor Krill? Admiral Grok? No. We particularly look forward to meeting you both. We have so much to discuss." The transmission cut off. In its place, a countdown appeared, ticking down from 7 days. Vex turned to Director Thorne, his frills drooping in shock. "How could we have miscalculated so badly?" Director Thorne's gaseous form swirled anxiously. "We didn't miscalculate. We underestimated. There's a difference." Across the chamber, Admiral Grok was bellowing orders into a communicator, his scales now an alarming shade of crimson. Chancellor Krill's tentacles were thrashing in what appeared to be a panic response. "What happens now?" whispered Liza. Vex stared at the countdown, watching the seconds tick away. "Oh," he said. "Now we learn whether humans are as reasonable as I claimed they were or as dangerous as Grok feared." The chamber's emergency lighting cast everyone in a bloody red glow as the countdown continued its inexorable march toward humanity's arrival. Galactic Standard Year 7532, third rotation, 6 days later. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Senate had never been so silent. 3,000 delegates from across the known universe sat rigid in their seats, all eyes fixed on the massive chronometer projected above the central podium. 00001342. 13 hours and 42 minutes until the human diplomatic vessels were scheduled to arrive. Councilor Vex Tartoon suppressed a shudder as he observed the armed guards stationed at every entrance. The once ceremonial Senate security forces had been supplemented by battle-hardened troops from 24 systems. Their weapons weren't ceremonial at all. "This is madness," whispered Liza, her scales shifting between anxiety green and anger red. "We are preparing to receive diplomats, not repel an invasion. Try telling that to Admiral Grok," Vex muttered, nodding toward the central platform. The massive draconian paced back and forth, barking orders into his communicator. Behind him stood Chancellor Krill, his normally vibrant tentacles now a pallid gray. The past 6 days had visibly aged the octopoid leader. "Attention, delegates," boomed the Chancellor's voice. "The emergency session will now commence. Admiral Grok will present the Security Council's assessment and recommended course of action." Admiral Grok stomped to the podium, his armored boots clanging ominously against the floor. The chamber's lighting glinted off his freshly polished battle medals. "Esteemed representatives," he growled, "the situation is grave but not hopeless. We have confirmed that human vessels are indeed approaching from 17 different vectors. They appear to be using some variant of warp technology we have never encountered before. Our weapons may be ineffective against their shields." A nervous murmur swept through the assembly. "However," continued Grok, raising a clawed hand for silence, "we have positioned our entire defensive fleet in strategic formations around this station. If the humans attempt any hostile action, they will meet overwhelming force." Director Pella Thorne of the Science Directorate floated forward, her containment suit pulsing with agitation. "Admiral," she said, her melodic voice cutting through the tension, "may I remind you that the humans specifically stated they are sending diplomatic vessels? Surrounding them with warships hardly seems conducive to peaceful dialogue." Grok's scaled nostrils flared. "With respect, Director, I don't take military advice from gas clouds. These creatures deceived us for decades. Who knows what other surprises they have planned?" Chancellor Krill intervened before the argument could escalate. "The Security Council's concerns are noted, as are the Science Directorate's objections. However, the Senate must decide on our official position before the humans arrive. Do we maintain our declaration of Earth as a Class 1 threat, or do we rescind it in light of recent developments?" Vex pressed his request to speak button before he could reconsider. When his indicator lit up, he rose on shaky legs. "Councilor Tartoon, acknowledged the Chancellor, you have the floor." Vex cleared his throat. "Esteemed colleagues, 6 days ago I stood before you advocating for caution in our approach to humanity. Many disagreed. Now we find ourselves in precisely the scenario I feared, facing a species we have grossly underestimated and needlessly antagonized." He gestured toward the massive viewports, showing the Confederation fleet in battle formation. "Look at us. We voted to quarantine humanity because we feared their warlike tendencies, and now we prepare to meet their diplomats with enough firepower to glass a small moon. Who, exactly, is the aggressive species here?" Admiral Grok slammed his fist on the podium. "The humans deployed a sophisticated cyber attack against our most secure systems. They have admitted to capturing our research vessels. They have threatened. They have threatened to respond if attacked," Vex interrupted. "That's not aggression, it's deterrence. A concept your military mind should understand perfectly." The chamber erupted into shouting. Chancellor Krill's amplified voice eventually restored order. "Perhaps," suggested the Chancellor, his tentacles twisting nervously, "we should hear from someone who specializes in first contact scenarios. Professor Zuli Tech, please address the Senate." A small, wizened figure hobbled to the center of the chamber. Professor Tech was from an ancient species known for their diplomatic expertise. Her skin resembled crumpled parchment, and her four eyes blinked independently as she surveyed the assembly. I have overseen first contact with 73 previously unknown species, she began, her voice surprisingly strong. None have begun quite like this one. But that doesn't mean we should abandon protocol or panic. She produced a small device that projected a holographic image of a human. Humans evolved as pursuit predators, she explained. They didn't have the strongest claws or the sharpest teeth. Instead, they developed extraordinary endurance, allowing them to chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. This shaped their psychology profoundly. The hologram shifted to show human explorers crossing oceans, scaling mountains, and eventually launching into space. Humans don't give up, continued Professor Tech. They pursue goals with relentless determination. When faced with obstacles, they innovate. When threatened, they unite. Most importantly, when respected, they reciprocate. She turned slowly, making eye contact with delegates around the chamber. Our mistake wasn't discovering them. Our mistake was discussing their extermination as if they were vermin rather than sentient beings worthy of basic dignity. Put simply, we insulted them. Deeply, profoundly, and now we must make amends. The chronometer above showed 00000917, 9 hours, 17 minutes remaining. Chancellor Krill's voice was strained. Thank you, Professor. The Senate will now vote on whether to rescind the Class 1 threat designation before the human delegation arrives. This time, the voting was swift. The tally appeared almost immediately. Yes, 2,913 no, 86 abstain, 14. The motion carries, announced the Chancellor. Earth is no longer classified as a threat to galactic security. Admiral Grok, please adjust security measures accordingly. The draconian scales darkened with rage, but he complied, barking orders to stand down unnecessary forces. As the session adjourned, Vex found himself surrounded by delegates seeking his insights on humanity. He answered as best he could, but his mind was elsewhere, focused on the approaching encounter. Councilor Tartoon. Vex turned to find Professor Tech standing behind him, her ancient eyes studying him intently. Professor, he greeted her with a respectful bow. Your words were most persuasive. And yours were most brave, she replied. Tell me, why did you defend a species you have never met? Vex hesitated. I have studied their broadcasts, their literature. They are fascinating, contradictory, terrible and wonderful in equal measure. Professor Tech nodded. You see the whole, not just the parts that frighten you. That's rare. It's also why the Chancellor has added you to the reception committee. Vex's frills flared in surprise. Me? But I'm just a junior counselor from the Cygnus Collective, she finished for him. A sector known for its cultural archives and diplomatic corps. You are perfectly qualified, and the humans specifically requested your presence. They what? How do they even know who I am? Professor Tech's wrinkled face creased into what might have been a smile. That, Counselor, is one of many questions we will soon have answered. The reception area was a magnificent space station constructed specifically for first contact ceremonies. Its architecture incorporated elements from thousands of member worlds, creating a neutral yet impressive environment. Vex stood with the other committee members, Chancellor Krill, Admiral Grok, who had insisted on attending despite objections, Director Thorne, Professor Tech, and representatives from the major galactic sectors. All wore their ceremonial best, though the Admiral's outfit still managed to incorporate armor plating. The chronometer reached 0. Nothing happened. 1 minute passed. Then 5, 10. Admiral Grok's scales began to flush with smug satisfaction. It seems our would-be conquerors have reconsidered. Just as the words left his mouth, the space outside the massive viewports rippled. There was no other word for it. As if reality itself had become fluid for a moment. A vessel appeared. Then another, and another. Within seconds, 17 ships hung in formation before the station. They were sleek, elegant craft that bore no visible weapons yet radiated an unmistakable sense of power. "No entry signatures," muttered a sensor technician. "No warp distortion, no hyperspace window." They just appeared. Admiral Grock's smug expression vanished. The largest vessel, positioned at the center of the formation, began moving toward the station's docking bay. Unlike Confederation ships, it moved with impossible precision, as if inertia were merely a suggestion rather than a law of physics. "They are requesting docking clearance," reported a communications officer. Chancellor Krill's tentacles twisted anxiously. "Granted." Minutes later, the reception committee stood facing the airlock that connected to the human vessel. Security personnel lined the walls, trying to look both alert and non-threatening simultaneously. The airlock cycled. The inner door slid open. What emerged was not what anyone expected. The first figure was recognizably human, but with subtle differences. Taller, with skin that had an almost metallic sheen. Behind this being came others, some obviously human, others clearly not. There was a being with 4 arms that appeared to be from the Andromedan Alliance, a silicon-based life form from the Outer Rim, and even a draconian like Admiral Grock. Leading them all was a woman whose bearing suggested natural authority. She wore a simple white uniform adorned with a single symbol, a circular emblem showing Earth surrounded by stars. "Admiral Tessa Reed," she announced, "United Earth Command. On behalf of humanity and our allies, I greet the Galactic Confederation." Chancellor Krill stepped forward, tentacles arranged in the formal pattern of diplomatic welcome. "Admiral Reed. The Confederation extends its greetings. We welcome this opportunity for dialogue." Admiral Reed's gaze swept across the reception committee, lingering momentarily on Admiral Grock before settling on Vex. "Councilor Tartoon," she said with a slight nod. "Your advocacy on our behalf was noted and appreciated." Vex's frills fluttered in surprise. You were watching the Senate deliberations?" "Every moment," she confirmed. "Your insights into human nature were remarkably perceptive for someone who's never met us." She smiled. "Until now." Before Vex could respond, Admiral Grock pushed forward, his massive frame radiating hostility. "Your presence here contradicts everything we know about technological development," he growled. "You claim to be from Earth, yet you possess capabilities that should be centuries beyond your reach. Explain yourselves." One of the non-human members of Reed's delegation, the 4-armed Andromedian, stepped forward. "Perhaps I can address that," he said in perfect galactic standard. "My name is Jorax Ven. Until 20 Earth years ago, I was a xenobiologist assigned to Observation Post Alpha 9 in the Sol system." A shocked murmur ran through the Confederation representatives. "I was captured during a routine sample collection," continued Jorax. "But instead of dissection or interrogation, I was offered something unexpected: collaboration. Humans had discovered our observation network decades earlier, but chose to learn rather than confront. They studied our technology, our language, our culture, all while we arrogantly believed we were the observers, not the observed." Admiral Reed nodded. "We have been preparing for this meeting for generations, not as conquerors, but as equals, perhaps even as teachers." Admiral Grock's scales darkened with outrage. "Teachers? You dare suggest?" "She suggests," interrupted the silicon-based being, "that there are paths to advancement you have overlooked, ways of manipulating space-time, energy, and matter that your Confederation abandoned millennia ago due to philosophical rather than technological limitations." Director Thorne floated forward, her gaseous form swirling with excitement. "You are speaking of the prohibited technologies. The theoretical physics our ancestors deemed too dangerous." "There is nothing inherently dangerous about knowledge," said Admiral Reed, "only in how it's applied. Humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our capacity for violence, it's our diversity of thought, our willingness to explore ideas others consider taboo." Chancellor Krill's tentacles twisted anxiously. "You speak of technologies that could destabilize the fabric of reality itself. or revolutionize every aspect of Confederation life, countered Reed. Energy production, medicine, transportation, communication. The benefits would be immeasurable. Vex found his voice at last. But if you have possessed these capabilities for so long, why reveal yourselves now? Why not earlier? Admiral Reed's expression softened. Because we needed to understand who we were dealing with. Whether the Confederation was a partner worth having. Your vote to classify us as a threat was disappointing but informative. It showed us we couldn't wait any longer, that misconceptions about humanity had reached a dangerous tipping point. She gestured to her diverse delegation. These individuals chose to join us, to learn from us and teach us in return. Many others have done the same across 24 worlds in what you call uncharted space. We have built something together, something neither human nor alien, but a synthesis of both. Professor Tech stepped forward, her ancient eyes gleaming with understanding. You are offering us a choice. Join your synthesis or remain separate. Exactly, said Reed. The Confederation has existed for 12,000 years, achieving remarkable stability. But stability can become stagnation without new ideas, new challenges. Humanity offers both. Admiral Grok snorted derisively. Pretty words to disguise a simple truth. This is conquest by another name. The draconian member of Reed's delegation spoke for the first time, his voice a rumbling bass. My ancestor fought alongside yours in the Orion campaign, Admiral Grok. Our species values strength and honesty above all else. So let me be clear, if humans wanted conquest, this would not be a diplomatic meeting. It would be a surrender ceremony. A tense silence fell over the gathering. Chancellor Krill's tentacles had paled to an alarming white. Admiral Reed sighed. That was more direct than I'd planned, but accurate. We could have chosen confrontation. Instead, we choose cooperation. The question is, what do you choose? Vex stepped forward, surprising even himself. And if I may suggest, perhaps we should continue this discussion in a more appropriate setting. The Senate chamber was designed for exactly this purpose, representatives of diverse worlds finding common ground. Chancellor Krill's color improved slightly. An excellent suggestion, Councilor Tartoon. Admiral Reed, would you and your delegation accompany us to address the full Senate? Reed nodded. With pleasure, Chancellor. As they proceeded toward the chamber, Vex found himself walking alongside Admiral Reed. You knew, he said quietly. You knew exactly how the Senate would vote. You knew I would speak in humanity's defense. Somehow you knew all of it. Reed smiled enigmatically. Let's just say humanity has been playing a very long game, Councilor. And we have gotten quite good at predicting how people will react. But why me? I'm hardly an influential figure in Confederation politics. Sometimes the most important voice is the one willing to speak truth when others won't, she replied. Besides, we needed someone on the inside who truly understood what humanity represents, not just our capacity for destruction, but our potential for creation. They reached the entrance to the Senate chamber. Inside, 3,000 representatives waited anxiously to meet the species they had nearly condemned to extinction. Admiral Reed paused, looking at Vex with unexpected gravity. The vote against Earth wasn't your mistake, Councilor. Your mistake was thinking you had the power to enforce it. Her expression softened. Fortunately for everyone, you also had the wisdom to reconsider. The massive doors swung open. The future of galactic civilization waited beyond. After you, Councilor Tartoon, said Admiral Reed. Let's make history together. Vex straightened his ceremonial sash one final time and stepped forward into a new era, one where humanity's place in the cosmos was no longer a question to be debated, but a reality to be embraced. Behind him, Admiral Reed whispered something that only Vex could hear. For what it's worth, your speech was right about us. Every word. The Senate doors closed behind them with a resounding thud of finality. The age of human isolation was over. The galaxy would never be the same again.